Explorer X here. Let's get into some crazy X stories. Whatever you do, don't open your door while you're listening. I don't want to tell you my age, but my relationship with my ex-boyfriend was a roller coaster ride of emotions, and it ended in a very troubling way. At the beginning, things seemed perfect. He was attentive, caring, and always willing to do anything to make me happy. I felt like I had found someone who truly understood me, and I let my guard down. But as time passed, I started to notice a change in his behavior. He became increasingly possessive and jealous, always wanting to know where I was and who I was with. He would get angry if I didn't answer his calls or texts right away, and would accuse me of seeing other people. I tried to brush it off as him just being insecure, and I hoped that he would change. But unfortunately, things only got worse. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around him, always having to be careful about what I said or did. I couldn't even have a normal conversation with my friends without him getting jealous and accusing me of flirting with them. He would check my phone and social media accounts and would question me about every detail of my day. I felt like I was losing my freedom and my sense of self. I knew that I couldn't continue in this relationship, but I didn't know how to end it. I was scared of how he would react, and I didn't want to hurt him. One day I realized that staying in the relationship was hurting me more than ending it. I mustered up the courage and ended it with him. I thought it would be a clean break, but I was wrong. He couldn't accept that it was over, and he started to stalk me. He would call me multiple times a day, sometimes hanging up when I answered, other times just breathing heavily on the other end of the line. He would show up at my work unannounced and would wait outside my apartment building for hours, just watching and waiting. He would also send me countless messages on social media, both private and public, accusing me of seeing other people and begging me to take him back. It got to the point where I felt like I was being suffocated. I couldn't go anywhere without feeling like he was watching me. I was scared to be alone, and I couldn't even sleep at night because I was worried he would break into my apartment. I changed my phone number and moved to a new place, but he always seemed to find me. He would show up at my new place of work and at my new apartment building. He would also send me gifts and flowers to my new address. I contacted the police and they were able to get a restraining order, but it hasn't stopped him completely. He still finds ways to contact me, and I don't feel safe. I have had to take drastic measures to ensure my safety. I've limited my social life. I don't go out alone, avoid certain places and people. I've even changed my name. I feel like I'm living in a prison, and I'm always looking over my shoulder. It's been a difficult and traumatic experience, but I know that I need to stay strong and do whatever it takes to keep myself safe. It's hard to trust anyone again, and I still have nightmares about him showing up. I hope that one day I will be able to move on and live a normal life again. But for now, I just have to take it one day at a time. I'm a 22-year-old guy, and I've had a lot of girlfriends in my lifetime. My current girlfriend, whom I have been with for 3 years, is the only one that has been happy and healthy. My first girlfriend in college was a pleasant experience, but my second girlfriend, let's call her Jane, was emotionally and sometimes physically abusive. I met Jane on a dating app, and we had a lot in common because we attended the same college. At first, things seemed great, but as time went on, Jane became increasingly controlling and obsessive. She would constantly check in on my whereabouts, and would get angry if I went out with friends without her. Eventually, the relationship became unbearable and I ended it. However, Jane did not take the breakup well, and continued to harass me with text messages. Things escalated to the point where she physically assaulted me one night. Despite my attempts to move on, Jane continued to stalk and harass me even after I blocked her. One night, I heard a pounding on my front door and was startled to find Jane and a strange, menacing-looking man standing on my doorstep. I immediately called the police, and they came to escort Jane and her companion away. After that incident, I had to get a restraining order against Jane. It was a scary and traumatic experience, but it was necessary for my own safety. I learned that it is important to trust my instincts and to not stay in a relationship that is not healthy for me. It's also important to have a support system of friends and family to rely on during difficult times. I'm grateful for the lessons that I learned from my relationship with Jane, but I'm also glad to have moved on and to be in a much happier and healthier relationship now. I'm a 25-year-old woman. I dated my ex-boyfriend David for 2 years, but it was a toxic and abusive relationship. I suffered a lot of physical and emotional abuse during our time together, but I was always too scared to leave him. I lived with my single mother in a small town, and I felt like I needed David's protection when I was walking home alone at night. My mother always disliked David and knew he wasn't good for me, but I stayed with him for a long time because I was scared of how he would react if I broke up with him. David had a history of anger issues, and I was afraid he would hurt me or someone else if I ended the relationship. Eventually, I mustered up the courage to end the relationship over text message because I felt it was the safest way to do it. I knew that if I did it in person, he might lash out and hurt me. David didn't take the breakup well and continued to harass me with phone calls and text messages. He would send me angry and threatening messages, and even showed up at my house uninvited multiple times. I was scared for my safety and the safety of my mother, so I had to change my phone number and get a restraining order against him. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night to a sound coming from outside my room, and I was afraid that David had somehow found my new number and showed up at my house. I immediately called my mother, but she wasn't home yet. I was scared and paranoid. I couldn't fall asleep anymore. I stayed up the whole night, with all the lights on, until my mother came home. The next day, I reported the incident to the police, and they increased patrols in the area to ensure my safety. It was a difficult and traumatic experience, but I'm glad I finally found the strength to leave the relationship. I learned that it's important to trust my instincts, and to not stay in a relationship that is not healthy for me. I also learned that it's important to have a support system of friends and family to rely on during difficult times, and to take any necessary precautions to ensure my safety. If you want your story added, email me at explorerxstories@mail.com. Thank you, my friends. Stay safe. Explorer X out.